So let me give you an example. My phone rang at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. I didn't have a phone call scheduled, but I could see from caller ID that it was my client, Frank, in New York City. Now, Frank was a transplant from the South who had landed in New York City. He was a president of a U.S. division of a global company. And on his morning New York commute, sometimes he liked to call me just to have a short conversation to get clear about something he needed to think about for the day. So I answered the phone. Hey, Frank, how you doing? I'm not good. Okay, what's going on, Frank? I think I could lose my job today. Okay, you definitely have my attention, so tell me why you're saying that. Well, last night when I went to bed, this was not on my calendar. But this morning, there's an appointment at 11 a.m. with the CEO and one of the board members. That can't be good. You know they fire people on Mondays. So what do you think? Is Frank in trouble? Let me give you a little bit more to see if you can help me decide. So Frank was, as I said, the president of the U.S. division of a global company. He'd been on the job for about 3 or 4 months that morning that he called me. And when he accepted the job, he'd actually been pursued by this company for almost a year. Probably a half dozen other companies had also been in hot pursuit of him. And the reason everybody wanted Frank on their team was because he had that perfect trifecta of skills. First, he was a brilliant visionary. Frank can see around corners. He has this way of seeing things that he believes are possible that nobody else, not only do they not believe they're possible, they can't even see them. Second, Frank is a brilliant strategist. Frank can see so clearly how to get from where they are to create that brilliant vision that he has. And third, Frank has a way of enrolling people to support the execution of that radical vision that he has. Instead of resisting it, he's actually able to get them to want to go there with him. And because of that, a lot of companies pursued him. So now knowing that, what do you think? Is Frank in trouble? Okay, maybe not. Maybe so. Let me give you a little bit more so that you can help me decide. So Frank had been on the job for several months, 3 or 4 months, by the time he called me. And when they hired him, the U.S. division was the poorest performing division across the globe. And so the people who hired him, including board members who talked to him, said, look, we need you to turn this around. We need you to break some glass. And we know it's going to be uncomfortable for you and a lot of other people, but we want you to do that. You have our full support, and we know it's going to get bad before it gets good. But you know how people they say they want the outcome of the change, but then when the process of the change actually starts to unfold, they're not always so excited about it? That's exactly what had been happening. Frank was now breaking some glass, and some of the very people who had hired him, who said they supported him, were starting to feel the discomfort of the process of the change. So now what do you think? Is Frank in trouble? So Frank and I had worked together on another project when he was at another company, probably 5 years before that. So some of my work was to coach Frank. And in one of those private moments with Frank, he confided in me, you know, I think I'm in trouble. I think I could maybe, or as Frank would say it, I think I could maybe lose my job. So he was concerned that senior leadership wasn't happy with his performance. So I just decided to check it out. So as I would talk to them, you know, without really telling them why, I would say, so how's Frank doing? And almost to a person, they told me, Frank is a rock star. We love this guy. We wish we had 100 Franks. In fact, we can't wait until he wraps this project up because we have some more and really important work that we want to get in front of him. So now what do you think? Is Frank in trouble? All right, let me give you one more piece of information about that. I talked to Frank that morning and I said, Frank, you know, I feel like we've danced this dance before. Do you remember 5 years ago when I was working with you and you told me that you thought you were in trouble? But when I checked it out, people said the exact opposite. Not only did they think you were not in trouble, they loved you. So is it possible, Frank, that the same thing is happening right now? If that's so, then let me offer you a couple of pieces of advice. First, if you really feel like you're going to lose your job today, then I want you to go in prepared. What will you say? How will you respond when they tell you that they're going to hand you your head today? But second, don't lead with that. They called the meeting. Let them lead the discussion. Let them set the agenda. They know what they want to talk about. Can you agree to that? Yes, I can do that. Okay, great. And the last thing I had Frank do was promise me that when the phone call was over, he would call me and let me know what had happened. So a few hours later, I got a phone call, and here's what happened. On Sunday night, the CEO and one of the board members went to dinner, and they started spinning up some ideas. They saw some future possibilities for the business. But before they talked to anyone else about it, they said, we've got to run this past Frank. So Monday morning in Europe, the CEO comes to work, finds a blank space on Frank's calendar, and schedules himself and one of the board members for a meeting. Monday morning in Europe is Sunday night in New York City. Frank wakes up to an appointment that had not been there the night before, and he immediately thought he was in trouble. They weren't calling to fire him, though. They were calling to ask him for his advice. It was a love fest. So now I have a different question for you. Is there something wrong with Frank? Exactly. Okay. So here's what I'll tell you. There is nothing wrong with Frank. In fact, Frank is normal. There is not a high performer that I work with that doesn't have some version of Frank going on for themselves. I'll call it head trash. That voice in your head that's telling you something's not right with either you or the situation. And it gets even louder when you're under pressure, like Frank was. But what I know is that voice, it's just talking trash. And as long as you let it be loud, you cannot free the genius. So my work, not only with Frank, but with you, is to help you get clear about what's your version of head trash. And what do you need to be able to do to quiet that head trash so that you can free your genius?